Good morning and welcome to the regular council meeting of Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025. We will call the meeting to order at 1 p.m. We'll begin with the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Cabmonaghan is located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to First Nations for their care for and teaching about these lands. May we honor these teachings. Look to council for approval of the agenda before us, moved by Councilor Burns, seconded by Councilor Natchap. All in favor? That is approved. Any disclosures of pecuniary interests? Seeing none. There is no closed session, so we'll begin today's meeting with a public meeting. And so we need a resolution to open the public meeting in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act RSO 1990. Moved by Councilor Burns, seconded by Councilor Edgerton. All in favor? So moved. So with that, we'll begin with the report. Matt Wilkinson will be presenting. Matt, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Through you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council and public. Today before you is planning report number 2025-30. The report presents two recommendations. One, that council receive and consider all comments related to zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA-04-25. And two, that bylaw number 2025-39 be approved to rezone the subject lands from the rural residential zone to the rural residential exception 30 zone. The owner of 838 Rossay Avenue wishes to construct an 81.7 square meter or 879.763 square foot detached accessory apartment within 12 meters or 40 feet of the principal dwelling at the rear of the property. The detached apartment will be serviced by connecting to the well and septic system shared with the principal dwelling. The submitted site plan was provided as attachment number 3 to this report. In areas outside pipe municipal services, the township zoning bylaw permits a maximum of one accessory apartment per dwelling, provided that the maximum floor area used for an accessory apartment does not exceed 45% the gross floor area of the building in which it is located. The accessory apartment must be located within the principal dwelling. The property is designated and zoned to permit up to 3 residential accessory buildings. 2 of the existing accessory buildings will be removed as part of this application, bringing the total accessory structures to 3. An amendment to the zoning bylaw is required to establish a site-specific zone that will permit an accessory apartment in a residential accessory structure. The site-specific zone will also establish the rear and side yard setbacks for that detached accessory apartment. Section 3.9B of the Township Official Plan requires an accessory apartment to be serviced by an extension from the existing dwelling to ensure that the private services are adequate to service the primary and secondary units. The proposed apartment will depend on the existing well for its water supply. The applicant has submitted an hydrogeologic study from ASC Environmental in support of the application. The study concluded that the potential water quantity problem will result in any quantity problems resulting from a mutual well interference are not expected. The water levels measured in the observational well in the pumping test showed no positive response during the pumping test. Therefore, issues related to unacceptable interference with neighboring wells are unlikely. The existing septic system will be upgraded to accommodate the new dwelling, and the new septic system has been reviewed as part of the building permit application. Notice of the amendment was circulated by first-class prepaid mail to all assessed persons within 120 meters or 400 feet of the subject property, to all required ministries, agencies, and township department directors. Notice of the public meeting was posted on the township website. A notice sign was posted at the front of the property. The notice complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. No comments from the public have been received related to this application. Township staff have no objection to the application. The Township Building Department will ensure that appropriate sewage system is in place to service both the main house and the accessory apartment as part of the building permit application. The Township Public Works Department noted that the property owners are required to request an update to the municipal addressing to recognize the accessory apartment. Comments were received from the City of Peterborough staff, Canada Post, and Enbridge, all who have no objection to the application. Since the drafting of the report, comments were received by the Otonabee Region Conservation Authority. And ORCA states that the property is not impacted by natural hazards and a development permit is not required by their agency. The proposed amendments are consistent with applicable policies and regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So at this point, we'll open it to members of council. Members of council, any questions with regards to the application? Seeing none, it is fairly straightforward. Thank you for that. We'll now open the floor. Any members of the public wishing to speak to the application? Just approach the mic there if anyone would like to speak. If not, going once, going twice, Sold. Okay. With that, consideration of the report. So, council, without any objections, that the motion or the recommendation is that council receive and consider all comments related to the zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 04-25 and that bylaw number 2025-39 be approved to rezone the subject lands from rural residential zone to rural residential exception 30 zone. Moved by Councillor Burns, second by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and thank you, Matt, for the report. Next, we need a resolution to close the public meeting. Moved by Councillor Burns, second by Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Moving on, next we have a delegation from Al Steele with regards to community engagement in the township strata plan. Al, over to you. I believe you know how that mic works, sir. You have 10 minutes for your delegation. Oh, sorry, right, sorry, council, I forgot, and that's my fault. I'll apologize. The clerk reminded me, Al has an update to just make a few small corrections on his presentation that he'd like to make to council. So we need a mover and a seconder to receive that updated presentation. Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. Now you're good to go. We're just going to get that presentation up and running, and then you'll have your 10 minutes to do your delegation now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I apologize for autofill. It did a good job, except that it's only a year late. Thank you very much, and I'm here really to, next slide, please. Really to ask council to have the township explain to the public the new township strategic plan, focusing on the what, why, who, and when, really focusing on what are the desired results and benefits to the public. And I would like that to be, or I think it should be, in an in-person type of environment where questions can be asked or written questions and comments taken to improve the document. As a second part of this, and really adding on to the first one, looking for 3 town halls during the last year of the current term of council. More specifically, that one in October, preferably not during hunting season. It focuses on the strategic plan, and then one in January to look at 2025 in review, and 26 as a preview. And then finally in June to talk about year to date and focus on the end of the year, and specifically what the next council's challenges will be and areas that need to be focused so that the public is ready for the election at the end of next year. These meetings should be held in the evening, preferably after 7 o'clock. Next slide. So why now? It's the start of budgeting cycle, and make sure that there's enough in the plan in order to cover it. And it is the last year of council, so what you have spent your time on preparing needs to start to make its way through the process, because next council may change things. Next slide. This was really for Mark so that he could be able to go to the plan if needed. Next slide, please. So when I saw Rob Adams present the strategic plan and read it over, I sort of went, oh. I've done a fair amount of strategic plans over the year, and there's some things that I think that are missing. So I went to Google and Googled it, and I took a look at Harvard's definition, and thought maybe this is like new math. And I decided to go where my grandkids go, and that's to AI, and asked, what is a strategic plan? And it's really a roadmap for organizations in the long term, but focused on the 3 to 5 year cycle. Next slide. So what's the purpose? It really provides direction and it clarifies where the organization needs to spend its resources and headcount in order to make the best decisions for the township. It fosters alignment, it allows for adaptability, but it also increases accountability by setting clear goals and performance metrics in the strategic plan helps hold individuals and teams accountable for their contributions. And it fosters communications, not only internally, but externally as well. Next slide. So what are the key components? Well, mission and vision are key components. It helps define what the future, desired future and the guiding principles are going to be. But even more so, a strategic plan is useless without the goals and objectives. And these need to be SMART. That is specific, measured, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And this are the things that the organizations need to focus on to achieve the goals. It also includes the strategies and tactics, and those are the nuts and bolts of what people need to do to accomplish these things. It also allows for performance measurement and also allocation of resources. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at what came out of the township's plan. The mission statement is nuts and bolts. It's keep the doors open and the lights on in a cost-effective way. But for the life of me, I really don't understand the mission statement. Next slide. So I wanted to take a thing that's sort of near and dear to my heart, and I've stood up and talked about it, and is in the plan. It's increase housing for seniors. So how does this line up with the things that need to take place and specifically in SMART goals? So specifics. So increase housing for seniors. How specific is that? Well, it doesn't state whether this is rental housing, whether it's long-term care, whether it's retirement home. Is this for smaller dwellings or what? There's no specifics for it. Measurable, doesn't have any metrics around it to measure it by. Is it achievable? Well, since we don't have those two things, we don't know whether or not it'll be achievable. Relevant? Yes, very much so. And time bound? There are no time bounds on this. So it really doesn't fall into it. It's more of an idea. So next slide, please. So my take in reading the plan, and I've read it many times, is that there's no clear vision, no clear direction, no time bounds, and most of the objectives are not SMART. And many of the objectives and actions are already in job descriptions. The document seems to be more of a ideas and a wish list than a plan. Next slide, please. Now, one of the areas that many on staff and on council know that community engagement has been a very big part of my wish list over the years. Next slide, please. So what was the engagement just on this plan, for example? According to the strategic plan that was presented, 79 people were out or did the online survey, and 29 came out for Monopoly night, and it comes to a total of 108. Now, we know a number of those people that were out for monopoly night also were part of the survey. So even taking the 108 and using that and looking at the total active households, quite often we talk about a population of 10,000. However, toddlers don't take an interest in politics and in these type of things. So I use a figure of 3,000 as the number here. And I believe the official census was somewhere around 3,700. So even with adding to that, we're only getting an engagement of, call it less than 3%, which for something as important as a strategic plan, I really have to have a question about that. Are we doing as well as what we should? Next slide. So I actually think that this priority is probably one of the best ones and well articulated. Community engagement is essential to build trust and ensures residents feel informed and involved in township initiatives. This priority emphasizes the importance of open communications and meaningful in-person interaction to strengthen relations with the community tongue-tied, by accessibility, education, and clear information sharing. The township aims to create an inclusive and information environment where all residents can actively participate and contribute to its future. Now, and it says, how do we accomplish this? Next slide. If we go through there and we apply the SMART goals point of view, there are no timeframes, there are nothing that are in there that talk about measurements and when to achieve this. Now, why this is kind of important is when the report came out, which was in the just after the new year, I sort of waited around, waiting to see how this would take place. As we were starting to come into it, I decided, well, if nothing seems to be bubbling up to have interaction and community engagement, I asked Councillor Burns to when these meetings or things were supposed to take place. And in the last council meeting, it came up and it was, well, we're thinking about an open house. So after asking for specifics about the plan back in the 2024 budget, public budget, was able to, or not able to get something. We're talking now about 20 months. It's still not on the agenda. So next slide, please. I'm asking again for 3 specific town halls, and the first one in October is focused on the strategic plan. And then the 2 other ones that basically the January one as a review of where we're been and where we're going, and then the final one in June. Next slide. And I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Al. Thanks for the delegation. I'll let members of council go ahead before, just have a few comments, but go ahead. Anyone, any questions, comments? Jerry? Council Byrne?
Through the chair, I'm gonna emphasize, because I hear it a lot, that people have a lack of faith, lack of trust, lack of understanding. So that's critical from where I'm sitting. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and think that if you had more than 3 meetings in the next while, if the participation was good and not menial, that you wouldn't be objecting to that either. But I'm wondering right now is what you're thinking of a time frame for the seniors facility, because I'm sitting back for the last several years with the anticipation of a new school. And that doesn't seem to be, even though it's been talked about and in the works and money set aside, it doesn't seem like it's going to be foreseeable in the near future.
So, through you, Chair, actually, the whole seniors was not that's a specific ask. That is one of the priorities that was in the strategic plan. And I use it as an example that, as is the case with many of the other priorities, that the goals are not well defined. They don't have any, very little specifics on them. They don't have any metrics on them. And they don't have any time stamps on them of when they're supposed to be completed. Each thing, as I said in my particular slide, my take is this is a great starting point for a lot of great ideas, but they're not plans. They haven't been vetted out to whether or not they're achievable and whether or not they're relevant in the scheme of the larger plan. On the timing, I believe that as you start, the first meeting is not going to be well attended. And as the slide for public or for community engagement talked about, it's about building trust. If there's value in something, people will start to turn out, but you have to show value. Right now, it's the matter, and I do attend Councillor Burns' chat sessions, and I do have conversation with other people, and I do ask them, why aren't you taking more interest in it? And their first comment is, well, they don't listen. So why should I put out time? And they basically aren't engaged. I think you show value, people will start coming out, and when it becomes, when people see that there are actions out, I'm the first guy to say, yeah, I have some ideas and I'll bring them up here and they'll be shot down. I don't mind that, that it's being out there and being up front and letting people know where they stand and why you have a position of what you do. But you have to do that. Greater portion of the township right now is not engaged because they don't feel they can be engaged. And you're going to have to build the trust.
Other questions, members of council? Deputy Mayor Hunley, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Nacho.
Through you, Chair. Just a couple comments, and I do appreciate you coming up, Al, and stating your opinions on the state of the union that we're in right now. The concept of more engagement is amazing. I'd love to see it. I'd love to know what we could do to crack that code to get people more engaged. And we face that on everything in terms of strategic planning or PICs, or even getting people out to be part of our committees. Like it's tough. It is really tough to get people engaged. And I would love to know what that secret sauce is to make that happen. That said, I'm still a little confused about what you're thriving for here in terms of do you want to facilitate a strategic plan in the future? Because you don't seem to like the one we have, and you don't seem to think that it's doing what it needs to do. Yet you want people to come out to do what? To agree with that you don't like it, or to be educated about what's in it? Like I'm just really not clear on what it is you're looking for in terms of this round of engagement, if this plan is not sufficient to what you think it should be.
Through you, Chair. Right, for the one that's out there right now, because there's a short time frame. What are you going to accomplish while this term of council is in place? You take a look at the strategic plan. There are no dates. There's no timeframes. What are you trying to accomplish? So maybe I'm a little lost because I see this as the roadmap, but I don't see where it's going. So I'm asking for the first meeting is that the township can explain what the plan is to the public. You know, that, yeah, you got some engagement before the plan. But once it was vetted and things put in, there wasn't a second go by of saying, okay, do we have this right? Is this what you thought? Type of thing. It was bang, it's presented, then it's sort of put on the shelf. At least that's the way that it looks to me. And I think I'm a little more attuned to what goes on in the in this hall than a lot of other people. So it's one of, okay, this is what we spent the money on, this is where we're going, because there are a lot of moving parts that have happened out there that people are asking about. For example, the tinny lands, what does that mean? You know, what are we trying to do downtown? You know, there are projects and it looks like, well, we'll just throw that thing. How do all these things connect? And nobody has spent any time articulating that. I can tell you, I make my own stories up of what you could be doing, but that's not what we're looking for, because then you're setting expectations that aren't not have the capability of being realized. So it's a matter of getting out and making sure that people are on the same page, which is a strategic plan's goals. It's really the roadmap so that everybody can take a look and we're here. This is where we're going to be at this time in the future. Yeah, things are going to change. And that's one of the things that everybody talks about is street bad, is it allows for adaptability. You know what you're planning, but if something comes up, it can change.
Councilor Nacha?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just to start off with, I want to thank you once again for your, continued support of showing up and being an active and caring person in what happens with what happens in our community. And that means a lot. Like a lot of people speak words and don't follow up with action. So I completely commend you with that. I agree with a lot of what you stated tonight, and I side as well with what Deputy Mayor Huntley had expressed, the frustrations and challenges of the engagement with the community. I do want to say I take exception to what Councillor Burns said in that there's a lack of faith. If he directed that towards staff or he directed it toward council itself, I think our staff does an incredible job. I speak with the community. I don't have open forums like he does for the public. I have people invited to come to my business. I talk to hundreds of my constituents throughout the year in person, one-on-one. They come to me and discuss their concerns of what happens in the community. And I advise to them to share those concerns with the applicable people in the appropriate departments. So I don't think it's necessarily gaining anything by crapping all over the process. I can appreciate that there are faults in the process and we can collectively work together to try to do that. I think communication is an incredible starting point for what I support your proposals for the 3 town halls, and I'll be there. I can't see that the staff would be wanting to not do that. I think, as Ryan had said, and talking with staff, trying to get the public to, you can sit on a soapbox, but as everyone has a voice, not everyone shows up like you do, Al. So I think that if you can do more on your end to rally your troops, we can do as well on our end to rally our troops. Thank you.
Thanks.
I want to first of all, and I totally agree, we've got great staff here. There's no question about that. And I don't think there are too many people that don't know me, type of thing. So I know how to pick up the phone and call and ask questions. However, that's not a lot of people. You have to look at it. People may come to a meeting and have a bunch of burning questions, but do not want to stand up at this mic and feel that they'll make a fool out of themselves. You have to have different things that allow different things to happen. So I could go to individuals and say, I don't really think too much of this particular strategic plan. I don't have a problem doing that. However, I'm one person, you say it once to me, and I can tell you that I'll go and have a conversation with somebody else, and by the time it gets back to me, I'm saying, I said that type of thing. No, this needs to be one voice coming out of what the position is. Al Steele will try to help rally some of the troops, and they're not my people. People sort of, well, we saw you here, or you had a comment about and stuff, so they do give me a call. I'm not affiliated with anybody, and I don't want to be the voice of the township because that's not my job. My job is to bring up what I think are various things, looking for the proper avenues. And I just don't think, and every township has a similar type of problem. The amount of engagement will vary, and it will be depending upon how the venues are orchestrated. We have a lot of people that would like to be more involved, but if you're doing a commute from Toronto, you've got an hour and a half one way. You can't make it back for these things, so you have to make them a little easier to get at. And there are a number of different things that if you get enough people around to give you honest feedback, you'll get a lot of good ideas. I have my particular ones because I'm retired. It's not that I don't have anything to do, believe me, that's far from it. But it's that I've learned that you have to take an active participation in this game because it's for the long term.
Okay, thanks, Al, for all those comments. Just a couple things. So, yeah, I understand, and as Deputy Mayor mentioned, like the participation and, enrollment and in a myriad of different things that the township does is always a challenge, and that's why I think this council has done more than most in previous councils to try new things. I think there's a lot of examples of that. I'm not going to list them all here, but even with this community engagement for this strategic plan, and I'm not a big strategic plan advocate, just pull things out of the room, especially because of the nuances of being or a government body with only 2 years left in a mandate. Like you said, there's room for flexibilities, but what I foresaw as the investment here was simply a strategic plan update, not rewriting the rule book because of the limited time. But to me, the real foundational thing why I think there's other issues with some of the proposals that you made. Like, to me, the absence of being able to work on our official plan is really hindering any thorough, more granular strategic planning. And the fact that, with only 2 years left in a mandate, if you want to use the example of the seniors housing, well, there's no ability for any rural municipality to manifest that out of the ether. There is only a concentrated effort that you can apply by networking with, and as it outlines in the excerpt that you presented. I mean, I can tell you, I've met with, more than 3 different seniors housing presenters of all different kinds. And we're having follow-up conversations with a new one that just came to light. So that's the strategic plan. That's trying to pursue that endeavor. It's not something we can manifest. We don't have the abilities that they do in the US between states to bonus and incentivize and things like that. You don't. And unfortunately, I think one of the hindrances that we're having in this community and a lot of rural communities is you can't meet the staffing requirements as well. I think after COVID, there's a big burn and sort of burnout of a lot of staff in that sort of supportive, roles in that network. And if you talk to people in that space, they're struggling to maintain existing staffing levels at the existing facilities. So they're having trouble rounding that corner about growing despite the need, despite the audience, despite the potential. And we have that demographic information that we've shared with some of these meetings that I'm in. And I'm optimistic that it might come to fruition in the next 2 years, but there's nothing I can do to manifest it other than be ready to play and be ready to explain the township's position in those meetings. And the only exception to that is Peterborough Housing Corp, which up until I think 2 years ago, the county didn't even have a seat on the board because they were denied a seat. And I can tell you from my analysis and serving as the county rep on that seat, there's only 12% of the beds in Peterborough Housing Corp in the entire county of Peterborough. And none of those are in the township of Catamonigan. So my role on that board, being the one non-city representative and outmanned 4-1, is to sort of saying, how can we believe that this is in remotely fair exchange, considering we're a 55% funder of the operational costs of Peterborough Housing Corp? So that's starting to take root. They're working on their own strategic plan. And I was astonished when we started that process where the previous strategic plan didn't have the word county in it at all. So it's very tricky to, just to give you an example of that one portfolio where there's taxpayers' money from the township of Catamonic going towards, through the county, towards this housing corporation. And we are not reaping the benefits of it unless you're one of the lucky few that qualify for some of the subsidizations in the facilities where they are now, which unfortunately is mostly in the city of Peterborough. So, there's a lot of levers being pulled in these different files. And I think that's why you see a variability in some components of the identified criteria or the identified objectives. Some are more, granular than others because of the ability to do that. And I can appreciate, and I think that's fair feedback about the smart granular things about certain things like that. But when we also saw some of the results of the tender for the strategic planning exercise, it's amazing the variability and the extent to which, what we were looking for was simply an update because we're having the absence of a zoning bylaw and a new OP. So we were trying to just get something online to sort of identify these objectives to give us some sort of semblance of order between staff and council. And to be honest, I don't think of the strategic plan as it's different in the public sector than it would be in the private sector. And very different because there is inescapable nuances. There isn't a set objective that all 5 councillors agree to for most subjects in the municipality. I mean, case in point, we talked, I think a lot of people, I think everyone, I'm not going to quote them on this, but, for instance, we talked about, the need for expanding, health services and medical centers, et cetera, like that. Well, we didn't have unanimous support at a budget to put away monies for that endeavor. So that's where in a public sector, you have to have the yin and the yang, and you can't be as granular as you might otherwise be because people still have their own jurisdiction and their own facility to advocate for what their perspective on an issue is for their constituents. And we can disagree on that. And that's kind of how it works. So I don't really think of a strategic plan as that granular a thing from a municipal standpoint, because it's so different a world than the private sector. Will we love more participation? Sure. But to me, I really think it's between staff and council to get on the same page on some higher level issues. And I think it's accomplished. Like I said, I didn't love the approach that the consultant took in this one, but it was a new effort. It was something that had been proposed that they had had success with in other areas. And so we tried it. And I'm not sure we would all support it next time, but it's again, you make these trying new things as a way to try to improve things. And I think this council is doing a lot of those things. This strategic plan has been adopted by council and is set in stone. It's done. So I don't really see any value in re-litigating or have further feedback, kind of as similar to people were discussing. Like, I hear your feedback and I even share some of it, but I don't think, based on the stage and the process that we've gone through for it, that ship has sailed. And I'm very optimistic that I think we have initial plans. I don't think we have a date set yet, but I think open house with staff, sort of town hall analogous thing is going to be scheduled for October. So that's something the staff are working on now. And then I really hope, and where I think it would be much more, you know, kind of useful and productive towards the pursuit of some of those granular objectives that you've touched on, is I'm really hopeful that we're going to be starting this official plan process in the new year, if not sooner. And that is a document that we are going to need copious amounts of specific and direct feedback on. I'm not sure how many of the public consultations there'll be, but there's usually, you know, 3 to 4 different things. We're going to have to make sure we're coming up with a really robust strategic plan for the RFP to work with a consultant on guiding us through that process. But that document is so much more foundational to me than some of the objectives and the intangibles about a higher level plan to get some sort of alignment between staff and council on. I would just hate for people to be showing up thinking that they're coming to have this feedback on a very specific foundational plan for the next 30 years or 20 years of the community, when we're just having a generic meeting about not a specific subject, because the township meetings or the open town halls that we've had in the past have been about something specific. And I think this OP is going to have 2, maybe 3 or 4 of them. So I think that's going to be a really opportunistic and a really important process to have significant feedback on from the municipality, rather than just sort of more generic, unorganized, you know, but chaotic meetings, which is something that when we all started, you know, we have, you know, training sessions with experts in the municipal space that do these trainings all over, and they also don't recommend doing it and conducting it that way. And I think I've said this before many times, and I'll say it again today, is that I don't understand, the mistrust usually comes from one historical engagement that could have been 20 years ago, could have been 30 years ago. That, though, every council is new 4 years, and you have to give it the new benefit of the doubt. And you need to, there's nothing stopping anyone from ever asking a question, setting up a meeting with myself, attending one of Councillor Burns' events. Like, however you want to do it is fine, but ask questions, send emails, ask for a meeting. There's nothing wrong with doing that and having those engagements. And we're always advocating for them. We are doing the pop-ups at different events with staff there. That's already been in place as of last year. So we're trying to create new ways of doing things, whether it's things as simple as the 2 letterboard signs that we're trying to circulate throughout the township to raise more awareness in places we haven't done. Drafting, you know, the 2-page newsletter that we sent out about a midterm report that I think speaks to a lot of the things, at least historically, that we've accomplished in the last 2 years, 2.5 years. So I think there's a lot of evidence to show that we are trying different things and trying, you know, they haven't borne as much fruit as we're hopeful. But I really think that, and I'm hopeful, and staff can maybe correct me, that this official plan engagement, public engagement, is a really important time to try to get it better and make a marked improvement, because that is a document that has significant long-lasting implications for the next council moving forward, far more than will for this council, because it'll probably just be getting finished while we're on the way out the door. So that's a bit of my feedback on it. I think that if there are specific sort of issues, it always helps to frame it more specifically. And I think with the amount of engagement that we're going to need and want for the OP, I think that's where we really should focus the next few efforts, and hopefully that people attend, and we're getting a lot of publicity. So we need that date rather soon about the October open house, so we can get that out there and get that participation. Do we have it yet? Sorry, I didn't see it on the document. Oh, it's on our agenda later on. So there you go. We'll have that date later on. But thank you, Mr. Steele, again for your engagement and your efforts, I'm sure.
I should be used to that. It's a faulty button. Yeah. A lot of things I definitely agree with you, and some I don't. The whole issue around a strategic plan is to set expectations. Thank you very much. And I think that's one of the areas that creates some of these things. I had great expectations of this. So you ask a question, well, that's not on our agenda or whatever. And I think that it's important to take and make sure that agendas are set and set correctly. And usually in a strategic plan, that's what you do, is you're setting expectations. In the business world, it's setting expectations for your board of directors, for your stockholders and so on. And if we take the same analogy, it's setting the proper example or expectations for people out there. So when you sit and you put in there that increase housing for seniors, the first question is going to be, okay, we got the manor. Are we going to get another manor, or what is going to be? And I'll be the first person to say that seniors housing and the whole issue about that is a very complicated, very multifaceted type of environment. But if you say to people, you know, we want your feedback, and and it won't be within the terms. But one of the things about a strategic plan is to set sort of a direction. And as I said in the beginning, that we understand that council can change and the whole directions can change, but at least there's a framework there to start to change from. And there are some investments that have been made for particular reasons. And I'll be quite honest, I haven't heard any what they're there for, and would be quite interested. So again, setting expectation, being able to put it in a place that people are able to look and be semi-self-sufficient.
Yeah, and I can understand that, Al, and that would be ideal, but I also think that there is some issues with transparency and confidentiality for some of these things that are inevitable. And like, to me, and again, this is just my perspective, I don't try to speak for all council. I mean, a lot of the strategic plan, I think all five of us, depending on who decides to run again. I mean, you start with your strategic plan is your platform. Like, that's what you're elected on. And then it is extrapolated then from, you know, it could be a strategic plan like this, because that's where you can harmonize certain things. You're not going to get to, you know, consensus on every element of everything or how or why. And I think whereas you, I think, want to be somewhat, you know, not be critical as in a horrible way, but I actually think there's the housing diversity or the housing, seniors housing being so open-ended is because there's so many different things that need to be done. And to say one or the other would be excluding the rest. And I'm like, there's not one answer to there, whether it's smaller accessible apartments within the complexes or planned developments that are going on. We're talking to Peterborough Housing Corp about getting out of the building game and start getting into the buying game, because you can't build cheap or as cheaply as, you know, people in the space that build. Like, there's lots of things that are there's a lot of moving pieces in that. And there are very few that this council or a rural municipality has a lot of significant levers to pull. But I don't want to beleaguer that. But I think, and then where it gets extrapolated next is the budget. Like, that's why we have those public budget meetings. I mean, we don't have it at the county anymore because I don't know, they've changed their tunes on that one, despite the previous mayor and I lobbying for them. But that's a decision they made. And you know, you were one of the only attendees for many years in the county, so I don't need to preach to you about that one. But, you know, I think that's where you really see what's going on. And we've struggled despite, I think everyone knows what the budget is. We've promoted those meetings and, you know, held after hours in the chamber or in the community hall, depending on the attendance. There's not a lot of input in that either. And that's really where you see it, because the rest of the year is mostly inputting what's been done with a few tweaks and changes along the way when it comes to opportunities. So I think, you know, with regards to certain elements, you know, you can have those conversations with council and we can answer them, but there is some nuances to some of that information that we can't just share publicly as much as we might want to, because there's implications that can undermine the success of the pursuits that we're engaging in. I can't tell you the name of the 3 different companies that I've met with. I can't do that because it's speculation draws their attention that they don't want. It'll affect the speculation on the land values that they're trying to negotiate for. They don't want me to do that. And I want to be as best friend to them as I possibly can, because we need them so badly. So, you know, I understand that. And I do think that that's part of the difference between, for me, is the difference in the public sector versus the private sector. But again, Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your appreciation. Well, we have to go. We've been way over on time on this, Al, so I'll give you 2 seconds, but then we got to move on, okay?
Not strong enough. So I thank you for those comments. And it's setting expectations. What you've done is alluded to something that I was using as an example and not specific, but it's saying to the community, what have we done? We're out having conversation with these type of things so that you're setting their expectation. It's just not left alone. So and nothing is being done. In talking about budget, is there going to be a public pre-meeting where people can talk about, have you thought about these things? Sorry? Many councils have a pre-budget so that people bring their wish list to you of things that they're looking for before it gets down to the end where it's got baked and you're asking for, is this what you want?
Yeah, so there's a December meeting, which is the first presentation where we invite everyone to come and get sort of the lay of the land. And then there's the second meeting in January. I believe it's on the 15th is the Thursday. That's the night meeting with regards to that discussion. And then there's the final budget meeting. Oh boy, February, Kimberly? Yeah, February. So that's sort of the process that we have set up. But again, you know, we're having conversations with different committees and different representatives that are coming forward with budget requests all the time. Like anyone can do that at any time. Like we have, whether it's groups or private citizens about issues, that's kind of how it works. And so those will be extrapolated into that first budget presentation and then going from there. Okay. All right. Yvette?
Sorry, through you, Chair, just a clarification. We just wanted to let you know that because we do have the strategic plan and the priorities set, there is an intention that we will be providing, because we're keeping track of the metrics and the process this year so far. So we will be coming back with an update on the strategic plan as part of the budget process.
Okay, so we'll look for some of the SMART objectives or more analysis on those objectives in the strategic plan for that budget conversation as well. Okay, and we have to move on with the meeting, so I'm going to look to council to receive the delegation today. Moved by Councilor Burns, seconded by Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Thanks again, Al, for all your time and efforts. Moving on. Next, we have minutes from the regular meeting held August 11th, 2025. Be approved as presented. I get a mover for those minutes, moved by Councilor Burns, seconded by Councilor Edgerton. All in favor? Those are approved as presented. Right, watch my language, Cindy. Next, 9.1 reports. Kimberly Pope, financial actual to budget January to June 2025. Ms. Pope.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to council, I have before you the Q2 actual to budget for the operating report. All departments are within budget. You'll see a range on the summary sheets of some variances there. That again is just that we're at the point in June, as of June 30th, what was posted to the GL. And this is before council for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. Questions, members of council, with regards to the actual to budget? Councilor Burn? Oh, sorry.
Through the chair, on page 45, one thing that struck me was the livestock losses actual through the clerk's department. Are we experiencing something? Am I missing something, or is there something we should be concerned about?
Ms. Page?
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne, there's nothing to be concerned about. So it's a program that's funded through the province. So if there's a loss, the loss comes in and then we submit it in depending what it is. So if there's a calf, then it does come in a little higher, or if it's, depending on what the livestock is that's killed, is the variation of the compensation that the farmer receives.
Through the chair. So I was just concerned, is it a money thing because the price of beef is way up, or is there a high intake of problems? That's all I was interested in.
Well, is that an answer? Did we get that? Okay, perfect. All right. Other questions, members of council? If not, I believe the recommendation is to just receive the actual budget report for the period of January 1st to June 30th, 2025. Moved by Counselor Burns, second by Counselor Natchat. All in favor? That is approved. Next item on the agenda, Public Works Unassumed Subdivision Road Winter Maintenance Agreement. I believe Wayne is speaking to this today. Wayne, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to council. Before you today is Public Works Report 2025-09. Recommendations before you are: number one, the council support the agreement between the Township of Cavan-Monaghan and Tower Hill Developments Incorporate to complete the road winter maintenance services as outlined in the attached unassumed subdivision road winter maintenance agreement 2025 on the plan of subdivision 45M266. Recommendation number two is that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the unassumed road winter maintenance agreement bylaw number 2025-40. And recommendation number three, that council direct the CAO and senior staff to do an annual review of the unassumed road subdivision road winter maintenance agreement for Tower Hill North subdivision and make administrative changes until the subdivision is fully assumed by the township. And Mr. Mayor, just a couple of additional comments, if I might. We have outlined in the report some of the issues on this subdivision. One, that the entrance to the fire hall is off Highlands Boulevard, so there is part of that roadway we would be maintaining at any for that purpose. Number two, this is the first time that we've done this. This is a trial. It is an agreement that's reviewed annually by senior staff with updates on financial and otherwise. And it also takes into account that the developer has had problems getting contractors to provide this service. We did in the previous subdivision have a lot of calls in regard to the levels of maintenance. So we are trying to provide the same level of maintenance as we might otherwise. And we're also trying to take into account a tax base as it grows through the occupancy of the subdivision. So with this is an agreement, of course, on winter control. Winter conditions are hard to predict. And we are aware that we will look at this each year to see whether we, are properly accounting for the cost to the municipality. There is a financial consideration. It has outlined a dollar amount. We had come up with a total amount of estimated on, I think it was 3 to 4 years of past service per kilometer, and it amounts to $7,900. There was $800 that we had credited back for the part of Highlands Boulevard that we're maintaining. And the net amount to be paid by the subdivider is $7,100 for the year of 2025-26. So this runs from November 1st through to April of the following year. We do, as we are aware, the number of streets will increase as the building permits are issued and occupancies occur. And we will accommodate that in a revised schedule in the agreement, which is a Schedule B that's noted in this agreement as of today. So we have the streets noted here that have permits on them. And that is the routes in and to and around those streets, but also there is 15 permits, 2 blocks of townhouses of 14 units, 7 each, and 1 single family that we're accommodating presently. So we are looking at occupancy sometime probably in the early part of 2026. So that's my comments to date, and then I'm open for questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Hancock. So just extended, just a bit more clarity. So my understanding and speaking with staff beforehand, so you got to start somewhere. As you mentioned, predicting winter isn't something that's very easy or getting any easier, I guess you could say. So if in the event that the 7,100 doesn't cover the 2025, 2026 winter season. My understanding is that the precedent for these types of agreements with other, whether it's developers and other municipalities, is that usually there's a true up that's just added to the next year, the following year contract, and then maybe additional adjustments for as we learn sort of and as we go. Is that correct? Because my concern was, okay, I understand you got to start somewhere at 7,100, but 7,100 doesn't seem like a lot if we're expecting a significant amount of precipitation this year. But I know kind of the fire hall has our own specific interest in mind, so I don't really care about being punitive about that because we need to do it anyways. But maybe you can just clarify that a little bit more.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the intent of the agreement is it is an annual agreement. It has a 5-year term. So after 5 years, of course, we can not continue it at all if we don't wish to. The annual agreement is intended to reflect costs truly and any lost costs that we might have in the year before, but also the occupancies going forward for the year after. So you're right with that point that it is to make up for any lost costs. We do allow for a lump sum payment that's due prior to the start of it, but we will do a true up at the end of the season.
No, and I can speak for, maybe Deputy Mayor Huntley can speak to this, but with regards to the Tower Hill South subdivision, there was issues because you can't send your machines into unassumed roads. So when residents that were living there, paying taxes and benefiting from services needed snow removal issues, we were then forced to track down the developer contacts and then go through the developer contacts to get to their contractor. So that broken telephone can just add hours and time that, residents would like a response in. And by doing this, hopefully we're kept whole and ability to make ourselves whole with the annual review of the contract, but we'll also be able to go directly and address the problems rather than have to wait for some maybe somewhat less reliable, especially in the early days when there's not a significant subdivision there, for someone to come and provide that service. So just the context for that local experience. Questions, members of council, Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Chair, and yeah, I will definitely second. It's way smarter to have this in place up front than what we had to go through with the other subdivision. So hats off to you for that. The only part of this one that I'm a little scratch my head at is that, starting rate of the 7,100 or 7,800, whatever you want to look at it. And that it's not more of a sliding scale depending on what it is you're actually plowing through there. Because obviously there's not that many houses there. So I'm assuming you're not really going to have to plow everything, are you, every time? And I thought you would just, kind of set a rate. And as you start to pull those streets on, that rate would just, increase to reflect it. But it seems like it's just one lump sum. Maybe some thought pattern behind that?
Through Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor Huntley, in the schedules, in Schedule A, we have listed all the streets and we've listed the kilometers per street. In Schedule B, we've listed the streets that would be plowed as of this year. And those are the ones that are connected to and are the ones that will have houses built and possibly occupied. So we will only be providing service to those roadways, and we have calculated the number on a per kilometer cost based on that for an annual winter cost. So as you have more building permits and more occupancies, you'll add streets to that, and of course you'll add your cost, and it will go higher. So our basis for this is we are only doing the streets that are in the schedule in Schedule B of that agreement. Those are the ones that we will provide service for as of 2025-26. Does that sort of answer the question?
Through you then, Chair. So the 7,100 reflects Schedule B, and as Schedule A gets added to it, then it'll keep increasing. Okay, that was the nuance I was missing. So thank you.
Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair. So to Deputy Mayor's point, I would think the developer will sell the houses as the people buy lots. And if they choose to buy a lot somewhere other than right at the front of the subdivision, they'll probably sell it to them and build on it. They might want to be near this new creek or this new school or some other things. That'll affect all that. What I'm more curious about is the length of duration. Are you locking in till the subdivision becomes completely our property? Or are we doing this on a year-to-year basis? Are we doing it on an annual revision, which was talked about, right? That there will be certain costs. I see the advantage. It's not new for us. We've done it in other subdivisions in the township where we have temporary arrangements to look after the snow removal. I'm just curious, when you sign this up, are you locked into it until that subdivision is complete, or how is that? Is it something that will be negotiated every year?
So just for clarity, just while Mr. Harris gone, so we haven't had an agreement like this in the township before. We haven't had an agreement with a developer to do snow removal prior to the full assumption. So that's why it was referenced in the report that this is a new endeavor for us. And then as well, to answer your question, like we talked about, it's that 7,100 is year one start price, and then it's revisited every year for renewal based on the initial permits and things like that. So Wayne, if there's addition maybe I missed, but, or Councillor Byrne, do you want to maybe add some clarity?
So as the mayor has mentioned, or I think as I mentioned previously, this is an annual agreement that will be renewed prior to November 1st of each year, and we will adjust the financial as well as the number of streets being maintained based on occupancy, et cetera, building permits where they may be. So we will add streets to that each year. This bylaw is for a term of 5 years. We have the option of not continuing it after 5 years. And it is for the term, generally a subdivision usually will go 5 to 10 years to assumption. And once it's assumed, it will become ours to maintain on our own. So that's the intent of what we have before us.
Councillor Byrne?
Through the chair, so I am under the impression that the subdivision up behind the second fire hall in Mount Pleasant, we looked after the roads before that subdivision was assumed because we were already doing part of the road. Is that not correct?
The subdivision on the end of Kennedy Road, it was plowed to the end there because the turnaround was at the end of the cul-de-sac. So that was one, but there was no agreement in place on that. That was just a turnaround actually for the snowplow. You're quite right there.
Okay. Councillor Nacho?
Thank you, through you, Chair. So Mr. Hancock, so if this is a 5-year term and then you said that we have an option, can you explain to me what the option is going to look like? Is it just a rinse and repeat year after year? Like, rent with the landlord? And it's just an assumptive, or do we know what increases that will be at the 5-year term? Is it at every year we opt back in?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Natchoff, the agreement itself is renewed annually, so that is to take into account increased number of streets. And we have set a timeline of 5 years to say, is this working or not working? And then we can look at the bylaw and we basically can say that we do not want to continue this. This is, it's not working out very well. There's too much, builder debris in the way, whatever it may be. So it is an annual renewed agreement right at this present time. We adjust the streets and dollar amount, and there's a 5-year term to see how it's working in the bylaw. So that is the intent. We have the right under the agreement to stop and cease doing the service if things are problematic for us. We have that in the agreement, but it is annual. And it will change annually based on the number of roadways and costs, et cetera. So we are taking that into account. We've set a term of 5 years to see, is this going to work? Is this a working document? And if it's not, then we will say, we're not providing this service any longer. It's not working, whatever the problems may be. We, in talking to our solicitor, he has said that they've done this in a number of other communities. They've done it really to establish the level of service that residents expect as they occupy. That's kind of the basis, and reduce complaints, along with the issue of the developer making the argument that you're collecting tax dollars and why are you collecting those. So we are trying to facilitate this type of idea, and I think this is the way most subdivisions will go as we move forward. But it will be, each one will have a separate agreement and bylaw to go with it.
Thank you. Kind of to the same question, but and I know we've had this issue with the last subdivision. Is this the same applicable policy that will happen during like spring to fall with street cleaning? Because I know with construction and dust and everything, you were having complaints from typically a lot of cyclists in the community saying there's a lot of gravel and that. So is this strictly just for snow removal, or is there a similar policy in place for street cleaning in that area?
Again, through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Natchoff, this is just strictly winter maintenance, it's just strictly snow removal. We have not get into an issue of street cleaning, and it's not part of this agreement. It is something of possibility in the future. I think we'll start with the snow removal, see how this is working out. If street cleaning and that comes into play, we will look at that as a separate item, separate agreement.
Okay, good discussion. So there are three recommendations in the report. The council support the agreement between the township of Cabot Monaghan and Tower Hill Developments, Inc. to complete road winter maintenance services as outlined in the attached unassumed subdivision road winter maintenance agreement 2025 on the plan of subdivision 45M-266, and that council authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign an unassumed subdivision road winter maintenance agreement, bylaw number 2025-40, and that council direct the CAO and senior staff to do an annual review of the unassumed subdivision road winter maintenance agreement for the Tower Hill North subdivision and make administrative changes until the subdivision is fully assumed by the township. I get a mover and a seconder for those recommendations. Moved by Councillor Natchoff, seconded by Councillor Byrne. All in favor? That is approved. Sorry, thanks. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the two recommendations with regards to the report for the road occupancy permit? Moved by Councillor Edgerton, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you, Ms. Abbott. Corporate Services 2025-11, updated integrity, accessibility standards, regulation policy. Mark is presenting again. Welcome, Mark.
For you, Mayor Graham, to council, presented before you is Report Corporate Services 2025-11, updated integrated accessibility standards regulation policy. The recommendation is that council adopt the updated integrated accessibility standard regulation policy. Just for an overview, under OREG 19111, integrated accessibility standards, as a designated public sector organization, the township is required to meet various accessibility standards. As part of these standards, the township is required to maintain policies governing how it is achieving accessibility. And the township originally met this requirement in December 2013 when the council approved the integrated accessibility standards regulation policy. Since the original policy was approved, there have been a number of significant changes to the regulations. Some previous other accessibility regulations were incorporated into OREG 19111. And there were some new requirements for consultation and standards for the design of public spaces. The township's IASR policy has been overhauled to reflect these changes in accessibility standards. The township is also required to establish and maintain a multi-year accessibility plan, outlining more specific strategy on how it is meeting the requirements under OREG 19111. The township does have a multi-year plan, and staff are currently working on a draft update of it. They are going to bring to the Accessibility Advisory Committee for consultation, as is required by the regulation. And staff will continue to review how the township provides services and gives access to facilities to people with disabilities to ensure it's compliant with the regulations and to achieve accessibility for all residents.
Okay, so Mark, if I understand correctly, and thank you for that summary, that was very good. So now what we've got is a document that's now current with legislation, and now that is going to be carried forward, and really sort of the champions of it will be in the task force of the accessibility committee, excuse me, not task force. And so they'll be taking that from here where it's now actually up to date with current legislation. Okay, gotcha. Questions, members of council? Deputy Mayor Hunley?
Through you, Chair, to, I guess, Mark, that's the expert here. Without going through the regulations and reading them, is there a requirement for this committee to come back to council and say, here's all the places where we meet it, here's where we have our deficiencies, here's what we've done over time to make these deficiencies not deficiencies anymore? Like, is there any form of transparency and reporting? I'm trying to take this back to Mr. Steele's comments, that we can report back to the public and say, here's our report card, here's what we've done, and here's all the great things we've accomplished, and here's what's still outstanding.
So there's kind of two components to the question. I'm happy you mentioned the report card element. There is a requirement under the legislation that the township report on its progress for its multi-year plan to council. It is the intent of the staff to prepare a report on our progress in the past year. So hopefully you will be seeing that later in the year, probably from our clerk, Ms. Page, on that. In terms of what the role of the committee itself, there's kind of two components in the legislation, both under the specific OREG for the accessibility standards, but also under the AODA. You can watch our nice overview from our first accessibility advisory committee meeting, where there's kind of a summary given to the committee of what its role is, but there's obligations to consult the committee on a number of things when you're constructing new or renovating, I want to use the word in the act, redeveloping public spaces. And there are certain things that you must consult on. There are several don't apply to us, for instance, public transit, so you don't need to worry about. There is also some other things that committee does need to be consulted on. They are allowed to review site plans during the site plan control process. And I don't want to, there are certain things that when the township purchases or leases facilities and other public spaces, the committee is required to be consulted by council on accessibility standards. There's no specific requirement to report back to council, just that the committee is to be consulted, and then staff, of course, take the committee's feedback seriously. And of course, council can do with the committee's comments as they see fit as well. I hope that answers your question.
Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Chair. I guess the one piece that was missing, I think, out of that was, the report card piece. Like, where are we and what have we done and where are we going? And I honestly, I'm not going to tune into your meetings and watch every meeting to find that out. I really hope that comes forward to us.
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Deputy Mayor Huntley, there will be an annual report card. It is something that is outstanding. So staff will be bringing you an update. It will be an overview of everything township and council have completed since 2013. And then annually moving forward, you will get a report card and everything that gets accomplished.
Thank you, Ms. Page and Mark, for those answers. Seeing no other hands, can I get a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that we adopt the updated integrity accessibility standards regulation policy? Moved by Councilor Byrne, second by Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Council committee verbal reports. We haven't had any committee meetings over the summer, but there's a lot upcoming. We're back in September. I have one or two updates. One that I think the library is working on is the finance committee meeting to begin to discuss the budget. We're trying to get that this week, if not next. And then I also wanted to wish Chief and I believe Councillor Edgerton well. And Chief, I know is a number of other members of the fire service are traveling to Ottawa this weekend for the public ceremony and recognition of Orville Thurtell, among others. And so we wish them a safe trip. And I appreciate Councillor Edgerton making the time, obviously, with the long history of the fire service in his vein. So we appreciate you being there and representing council as such, and safe journey there and back. With that, can I receive a motion for that verbal update? Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. There are no general business. There is no correspondence for information. There is one item as correspondence for action. That was just the attachment. I believe it was asked for a little more follow-up with regards to the independent electricity system operator, the delegation that came to council that was had some questions. So that is there for council's review. If there's no questions, we can just receive this correspondence. Councilor Byrne, question? Yep.
Through the chair to the chair, it says there's numerous companies, and I from what you said earlier, you can't talk about it. Can we talk about what that number might be that are interested in this battery storage in our township?
Ms. Page?
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne, the only two that I know of are the two that came to that delegation that day.
Can I get a mover to receive that for information? Moved by Councilor Byrne, second by Councilor Edgerton. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you. Bylaws, bylaw number 2025-39 being zoning bylaw amendment, ZBA 0405, 838 Rothsay Avenue. Hold on, I just gotta get it straight here. 1 second. Oh, sorry, I've jumped around. That bylaw number, sorry, excuse me, bylaw number 2025-39 zoning bylaw amendment, ZBA 04-25, 838 Rothsay Avenue, and bylaw number 2025-40 being a bylaw to execute an unassumed road unassumed subdivision road winter maintenance agreement between the Township of Catamonigan and Tower Hill Developments, Inc. for winter maintenance services of an unassumed subdivision roads within the Tower Hill North subdivision. Be read a first, second, and third time and passed the second day of September, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached there too. Moved by Counselor Burns, seconded by Counselor Natchez. All in favor? That is approved. Apologies, I'm out of my bylaw reading practice. There is no unfinished business. Any notices in motion? Seeing none. The confirming bylaw, the bylaw number 2025-41 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held September 2nd, 2025, be read a first, second, third time and passed this second day of September, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached there too. Moved by Counselor Byrne, seconded by Deputy Mayor Huntley. Lastly, a motion to adjourn today's meeting, Deputy Mayor Huntley and Counselor Natchez. All in favor? That is approved. There is a number of upcoming events. As I mentioned, the rescheduled movie night for Messiah is tomorrow night, and the movie starts sharply, I believe, 7:45, a slight time adjustment, but there's lots of activities going on at 7, as of 7 PM onwards, correct? Perfect, I got that right. Next, upcoming, so the Monaghan Public Library Board meeting is Tuesday, September 9th at 7 PM. The next regular council meeting is Monday, September 15th at 1 PM. The Municipal Revitalization and Heritage Advisory Committee meeting Thursday, September 18th at 9 AM. The Millbrook Valley Trails Advisory Meeting is Monday, September 22nd at 4 PM. And the Millbrook Water Storage Class EA Public Information Session is Wednesday, September 24th from 4 PM to 6 PM at the Township Office right here. There is also a Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting on Thursday, September 25th at 1 PM. And Your Township, Your Team is the event that was alluded to. The open house with staff is scheduled for Wednesday, October 8th, 2025 from 3 PM to 6 PM at the CMCC Community Hall. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you in the township. And all the kids, welcome back to school. Take care.